Do you feel that your smoking triggers are too strong? That you try to quit smoking, you try to quit vaping, and then everything is coming at you? Stress, boredom, loneliness, socializing with smokers? And in that moment, you feel completely powerless to say no to smoking. If that's you, I'm going to show you why you feel powerless over your smoking triggers. I used to think that I couldn't quit smoking because of my triggers, but I was wrong. And I'll show you why if you feel the same. Because if you feel that your triggers are sabotaging you, you're absolutely not alone. I used to think that a rehab for smokers would help me. I thought to myself, if I can go there and detach and detox and not be around my triggers for a little bit, then I could go on and stay quit. But it doesn't work like that because one, we cannot escape our emotions and our cravings and our withdrawals that come from the inside. And two, once we are back to our normal routine, what happens? All our triggers are there waiting for us, especially with smoking and vaping that have such a strong behavioral dependence. So let me show you in this video what triggers really are, why avoiding our triggers is not the answer, and how triggers are neutralized. So what triggers are? Let's see how triggers are formed. For example, let's say I smoke when I am stressed. So I experience stress, I light up a cigarette. Stress, I smoke. Stress, and I smoke. And I do this again and again and again. So with time and repetition, the brain creates an association between stress and a cigarette. And over time, it starts considering stress and smoking as one and the same. It pairs those two activities and situations. And then my brain, to save the energy, next time I'm stressed, it stops assessing if I need a cigarette or what could really help me with stress. It stops assessing and it immediately reminds me to do what? To smoke, because it is a shortcut. It is an active association. So now I feel that I cannot relax unless I have a cigarette. And this is how we form any trigger. For example, if you're smoking while driving and you smoke and drive and you do this again and again, you have an active association. So then after a while, you get in your car and immediately you're reminded to do what? To smoke, to vape. Otherwise, driving feels incomplete, right? Same with smoking and coffee, smoking after a meal, when we feel bored, during breaks, or even during a crisis. The brain automatically reminds you to smoke because you have an active association. And if you resist that urge, what happens? You feel restless and agitated, or you feel like you're becoming someone else, someone you cannot recognize. So all the situations and emotions you've associated and experienced with smoking over time, they become triggers that remind us to smoke. And it all happens on autopilot. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. For example, you sit on your couch after a long day and automatically you do this. You reach for a cigarette, you reach for your vape. If you resist that tendency, that urge, you feel restless. Or you sit on your couch and you realize you have a lit cigarette between your fingers and you don't even remember lighting it. Has this ever happened to you? That's because we smoke on autopilot. And these are different ways that the behavioral addiction shows up in our lives. So we think it's the situation that's important. We think it's the situation that triggers us to smoke. The coffee, the alcohol, the stress. We think this is what makes us smoke and stops us from quitting. But our triggers are not what makes us smoke. Triggers are just reminders of where smoking lives in your life and in your mind. What makes you smoke is not the situation. It is the pattern, the program you taught yourself, the learned response to the trigger. So it's not the trigger, it is the learned response to the trigger. Think about it like this. Someone who has never smoked, someone who is a happy ex-smoker, and someone who is a smoker, they all socialize. But it is only the smoker that needs a cigarette in this situation. So it is not the trigger, it is not the situation itself, it is our learned response, our conditioned response. It is the program inside. That's why avoiding our triggers is not the solution. Because think about it, and I think you already know this, you cannot avoid your life. You cannot quit smoking and go through life trying to avoid everyone and everything that could potentially trigger you to smoke. That's not freedom. Like I tell our members on the CBQ Nicotine Freedom Program, avoidance backfires, presence rewires. Avoidance backfires, presence rewires. What do I mean by that? Avoidance, when we avoid triggers, this catches up with you eventually. Let's say I love being on my front porch and I used to smoke there, but now I quit and I avoid going there because I am afraid I'm going to be triggered. But then eventually I have to go to my front porch and I'm unprepared. So the old pattern is overpowering because I have an active association, because I never addressed it. Make sense? On the other hand, presence, being with and in the situations that used to trigger us, presence is what allows you to rewire your mind. For example, if every time you experience an old trigger as a non-smoker without feeling deprived, non-deprivation is key. When you experience an old trigger as a non-smoker, you give your brain new information. And not just intellectually, you show your brain, hey, I can do this. Nothing happened. So this, with repetition, creates new associations in the brain on the neurological level as well. Until smoking does not anymore come to your mind. You have stress, and smoking is not where your mind goes. You have a long day, and smoking is not what comes to your mind. Or you see someone smoking, and what you think, if anything, is, I'm glad I don't have to do this anymore. So, not smoking, freedom becomes your new normal. Now, maybe you're asking yourself, is this really possible? Is this really possible to break those associations if I've been smoking all my life? If I've been a smoker longer than I've been a non-smoker in the past? Yes, the answer is yes. You can create new patterns because of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity, and this is a neuroscience fact. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change and form new connections, new associations, new ways of thinking and being, and do that at any age. Because of Hebb's law, we either strengthen our old patterns or create new patterns. Hebb's law says, you've probably heard of this before, it says, neurons that fire together wire together. So we either strengthen old patterns or create new patterns. For example, every time we repeat old patterns, we strengthen old associations. Every time I smoke when socializing, this is a vote to strengthen that association between smoking and socializing, that neural pathway. But when I create new patterns, for example, when I socialize as a non-smoker, I create a new association between socializing and being myself, being free. So I create a new neural pathway. So with repetition, this becomes my default. Make sense? So think about it like this. And the old association in your mind, it's like you have a path in your brain. And that path, it is clear, it is familiar, it is well walked, it is well worn. It is the path you take every time you experience a trigger and respond with smoking or vaping. When you first create a new association, this is like facing a field that has tall grass, and you have to carve the new path. You have to carve your way, and you walk that path. But when you walk that path again and again, it becomes the new normal. It becomes the well-worn and well-walked path until weeds grow on the old path, and then you have a new normal. So when quitting smoking, we have to actively create a new path, a new response for the situations and the emotions we've previously linked to smoking. And this is not going to happen with a passage of time, because if we quit smoking and we're deprived and we try to create new paths, every time we experience those situations as a non-smoker, it's just going to be a reminder of how much we miss smoking. So this is very important. So that's why in our CBQ Nicotine Freedom Program, we don't avoid our triggers, we neutralize their impact. And we do this before the quit date. What this does is the situation is there, but it's not anymore connected with a smoking response. That's the goal. That's freedom. And this is what I want you to take away. Avoidance backfires, presence rewires. Presence is how you neutralize your triggers. And this happens on stage 3 of the CBQ method, which is habit reversal. And this is the only process that actually neutralizes your triggers, learning to respond to your triggers differently without deprivation. The CBQ method has 4 stages in total that are based on cognitive behavioral science, and they change your relationship with smoking, so the psychological, cognitive, and emotional level, and breaking the habit, which is the behavioral level. If you want to learn more about how the CBQ method works and get the blueprint of the CBQ method, or just wish to learn more about our members program, check the resources in the description of this video. And before you go, let me know in the comments, was this video helpful to you? Did you start seeing a new way to approach your triggers? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.